Hi, this is Dan Sullivan. I'd like to welcome you to the Multiplier Mindset Podcast. Today's pre-zone success story is such a pleasure for me because Jeffrey Mark, he's such a great guy. He came into the 10 times program. In those days, you could go right into 10 times. And I could tell when I met him, we had a intro party before the first workshop. And I met him, and the next day when he came in for his workshop, I could tell he was really skeptical. He said, all right, I've heard great things about you. You're like, who are you? It's so funny because I really connected with him right off the bat. I'm used to, after about 50 years of coaching, people have had bad experiences with so-called experts, or they've had bad experience with somebody who was supposed to be really, really smart. It was disappointing. But what I got as I went along the way, he's super smart and he's super talented at what he does. It's architecture and interior design, and he operates out of New York City. I mean, he lives part of the time in the New York City area. He's got his company and his offices, and also in Jerusalem. So he splits his year back and forth. But the story I got out of him, and the story that we have, is just about the worst year, the worst month, the worst week, the worst day that he ever had as an entrepreneur. And technically he was bankrupt. He was going through the worst divorce that you can possibly imagine. His father died and he was being sued. So he tells the story that, his lawyer says, well, you're going to have to close down your business. You can't keep going. And Jeffrey turned to the lawyer and he says, how much do we owe you? And he says, well, $3,000. And then he turns to his accountant. He said, how much money do we have in the company? And the accountant says, $5,000. And he says, well, write him a check for $3,000 and you're fired. The guy said, no, we have to. He said, no. He said, I want to be surrounded by people who have a strategy of winning here.
The Gap is just a really hard place to be. And it happens to everybody, from what I understand and what I've learned here, daily. For me, I'm a very optimistic person. I always, use as an example, when I buy a lotto ticket, I am not wasting that $2 on just losing. I really buy it and I believe I've got the ticket. I think I'm going to win. I also don't buy it unless it's at least $100 million and over. But when I buy that ticket, I've got the winning ticket, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I can't wait. I can't wait to hear the results. Okay, so I lose. Fine. But you know what? But at least I was in it to win it, right? Is that what they say? So, like I said, I'm optimistic in everything I do. And whatever I try to do and whatever I achieve, and with my family and with my friends and I love a good party. Not to start talking about unique ability, but I did that with Julia years ago. And I try to live in my unique ability, and I love a good party. I love fun. I love fun people, good people, working with the right vibe. I can't be in silence either. In both of my showrooms, we're in the interior design business in Jerusalem, Israel, and in New York. There's always music pumping through, at times even loud. And when I'm concentrating, I'm like, can someone raise the volume? And they're like, he's crazy. But you know what? It keeps me out of the Gap. It keeps everybody singing. The gain side is, look, it's what we've learned over our lives. And one of the things that I've learned here is just go back. Go back to where you came from. Go back 20 years, go back 30 years and say, hey, I have never felt so good in my life or been in as good shape as I am, because I'm really an obese person. I've lost 90 pounds and I work out every day, and I have personal trainers, and I run 5 kilometers 3-4 days a week, and I'm loving it. I'm out there at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning doing my thing. And then by the time I get to work, I'm on top of a mountain. I'm like, guys, let's go. Come on, everybody, and I've got it. I can't explain it, but I've got it. And sometimes I'll wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh God, oh my God. And you know what? It takes me about 20 minutes to get into the gym, and it takes me about a little bit less than that. And next thing you know, the endorphins are just bursting in my head, and I'm great. Then when I start to get into this horrible Gap feeling, I'm like, well, you know what? 5 years ago, you didn't have the kind of money you have today. And 10 years ago, you only had one showroom. And 20 years ago, it was only 900 square feet. And I started it by myself, and the rent was $900, and we didn't even know how we were going to pay that. Then when we look today and we like, oh my God, we lost this $5 million deal or this $2 million something, we're like, holy cow. And that takes you out of the gap because you start to look backwards and say, look where I am today. Look what I've accomplished today. Even being here in Strategic Coach is a huge accomplishment for me. I've been taking these amazing vacations now and time off, and I always say Strategic Coach is a lifestyle. And if you want to be part of it and you get it, you could live like you've never lived before. It's just really great. And sometimes I refer back to my materials. I spend every morning, there's terrible traffic in Jerusalem, because we're in the heart of the city in Israel. 20-minute drive takes me about an hour to get to work. So I spend every morning with Shannon or Dan on a podcast. And you know what? It's really nice. I've got my coffee. I've got my bottle of water. I'm in my gym clothes. I'm driving in traffic. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's good. I was listening to The Gap and the Gain. And, there's just such great tools, and that's what it is. Like, you don't want to be there, and if you can learn how to get out of the gap and smile and feel good about yourself, it's priceless. J. Mark Interiors, my business has been open for almost 25 years. And, as all businesses, there's ups and downs and whatever. And 15 years ago, we were doing really incredible. It was an amazing year until like 2008 hit around. And I just had like a really bad year. I got divorced that year. We were being sued from some company. We were having a tax audit. On top of that, my dad got sick and passed away. And in my divorce, because I live in 2 countries, so I was getting divorced in 2 countries. I had like 7 attorneys working for me, and the money is just like flying out. I don't even know which end to turn. I have also a business partner who I took in because when I moved to Israel, I was told like there's no way you can commute 6,000 miles every week, and you've got to have a partner there. So I took in a partner he was just terrible, and he was in for many years. And I remember that. I remember 2008 saying, I thought I was drowning, and thank God I got out of it. You know what? It's over 11 years ago. And ever since then, I think of that year and I say, holy cow, I'm remarried. Thank God, a great woman. I've got wonderful children. I live in 2 countries. I've got multiple homes. I've got another business we opened up when I was in Israel. Now I decided to open up another showroom that is, thank God, doing wonderfully. And I figured it out. And I travel every Wednesday. I take a 12-hour flight back and forth from one country to another. And I enjoy it. I love it. I love being on the plane. I've got my travel buddies. And I'll never forget that year. But you know what? I'm so much smarter today, and I'm so much better because of that year. And, you talk about being in the gap, like it all just hit in one shot. And I remember so much money between lawyers and fees and divorce. And it was like just a tornado of like a mess. And to end my story, we were having a meeting in my office, and one of my attorneys said, our business attorney said, look, it looks like you're going to have to close the business. Like we're bad. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, Jeffrey, you owe so much money. And, there's people knocking on the door. And I said, okay, well, how much do we owe you? So at the time, I think we only owed him about, $3,000 something or whatever it was. So I said we had our accountants there for the meeting. Also, as a whole in the conference room, I said, well, how much money do we have? And he says, just under $5,000, Jeffrey, the account. I said, good. Write him a check, pay him. I said, so now you're paid, and guess what? Take your check and get out of here. You're fired. I said, that's not the way that we think here. I said, let's just do it. And when it was over, when the divorce was over, I bought out my partner. All the bad stuff went away. The first year, and I was in debt for over $1 million. And I was told to close my business. And I had a great team of people with me who really cared about the business, cared about me. Year 1, our gross sales went up 486%. And people have said to me, why? How do you explain that? Like I said, look, when the clouds are gray, you can't do your stuff. It doesn't work. And really what I meant is when you're in the gap and you're so low, how can you concentrate? You've got to get out of that. And as soon as the partner was bought out, as soon as the divorce was settled, as soon as the lawsuits were over and the tax audit was done and all this was finally like at ground level, And the money was huge, what we owed. At that point, $1 million to me then was like, I don't even know, like 100 million today. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And the team said, guys, let's get together. Let's work every night. We'll work. We'll figure it out, whatever. Before year one was over, there was no more debt. The rainbow came out. I shouldn't take for granted that I had all these problems and issues and that I got out of it and yay, for me, I won, but rather utilize it going forward. And to get out of the gap, think back to that year. We are doing great. Our team is 5 times the size it was back then. Our locations are incredible. And everybody who's on our team are incredible people. And that's what you get here also.
I often find that when entrepreneurs turn themselves around, there's some time when they just have to totally stick up for themselves when nobody else is sticking up for them. And to me, what Jeffrey said to that lawyer really is one of the clearest stories where he said, I'm nowhere, nobody's supporting me, I got no opportunity, but I'm sticking up for myself. And the moment that you stick up for yourself when there's no evidence, no proof that you should, is when the turnaround starts. And within a couple of years, he had the best year by 450%. And it's been such a joy to have Jeffrey come in. I see him every 90 days and talk about how he's thinking about things and how his business is going. And delights me that Strategic Coach can be a part of this kind of story.